and students to see if the views were different or the same. The adults were also asked demographic questions like job title, age, gender, race, and whether or not they are a current advisor. The students were also asked demographic questions like grade, gender, race, and if they have a parent or guardian who works at the high school. Of the 255 adults and 300 students, 64 adults and 67 students responded to the survey. Of the adults, 71.9% are teachers and 82.2% are over the age of 40. 38 respondents are female and 25 are male, and 1 has other pronouns. For the students, 31.3% are 9th graders, followed by 25.4% being 12th graders. 45 are female and 22 are male. These images show the results of the connectedness questions. On the left are the adult responses, and on the right are the student responses. As you can see, more adults observed cliques and thought them to create divides among students. These results were surprising, but helped fill the gap, showing that adults are more observant of harmful social structures. This will help them profile students and perform threat assessment as they have knowledge of how students work together in these social dynamics. The second part to my first method was interviews. So from the surveys, I gathered data on the perspectives of adults and students, and I used that to inform my interviews. Of the 64 adults, 25 volunteered for interviews. I selected 8 based on job title or advisory grade. Of the 8, 5 completed interviews. From the 67 students, 8 volunteered for interviews, and of the 8, only 2 completed interviews. In the interviews with adults, I asked questions about their role as an advisor, like how they foster connections, and if the group atmosphere has changed. Administrators were asked questions about feeling connected to the student body. From there, I asked about experiences with violent students and if they have ever had training in violence prevention. Most of the adults had done training in de-escalation, but only 2 of the 5 have been trained in threat assessment. Of the 3 teachers interviewed, only 1 has had proper training. Using this information and prior knowledge of the school, I inferred that approximately 60% of the teacher population has not been trained in threat assessment. In the interviews with students, I asked questions about their advisory and whether or not they liked the activities and people. From there, I asked if they feel connected within the school community and if they think others feel connected too. Both students felt the high school tries very hard to make students feel welcome, but it takes effort from the kids as well. From there, I asked if they had ever had experience with violence on campus. The students have not been involved in a violent incident, but both shared their fears of an attack in the future. Hearing their fears was helpful for creating my curriculum as to not have students centered around worry, but to be centered around creating connections with one another. The second method to my research was creating my curriculum. So using the information gathered in the surveys and interviews, I was able to create an advisory curriculum that utilizes threat assessment to hopefully prevent gun violence. To better understand the curriculum, I base it off of different models. As defined by Sarah Brody-Schulkind and Jack Foote, an advisory is, quote, a group of students who meet regularly with an adult advisor for social and academic advice, end quote. With this in mind, I used John Galassi's idea of, quote, we are family, end quote, mentality. When advisors implement this, the students form close bonds with one another. Finally, Kristen Schaefer-Schumio and Amy Petraka Ginsburg state that the best violence prevention programs are long-term, and following other models, this advisory curriculum would be long-term over the course of 4 years of high school. My curriculum has 5 parts. Part 1 is the training of the adults. The Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, has a threat assessment training program called Threat Evaluation and Reporting Overview, or TARO. State representatives or counselors would contact their local certified master trainer to set up a seminar for all local teachers and administrators. Through TARO, the teachers would learn threat assessment and connectedness activities. The activities include friendly competition games like charades or Pictionary, or even classroom picnics where students contribute food for everyone. The administrators would follow the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency program for proper de-escalation procedures. That way, they can step in and aid in violent incidents. After training, the adults would have specific roles within the school. Teachers would use advisory blocks to assess their advisees, looking out for behavioral changes that could cause the student to resort to violence. These changes will be easily noticed since the advisor would be focusing on just their 10 to 12 advisees, forming strong connections over their 4 years of high school. If a student needs help or resorts to violence, the administrators would step in and de-escalate the situation and provide adequate help for the student. This help could be forms of discipline or mental health counseling. Part 3 of the curriculum ensures that students are placed with an advisor they feel comfortable with. Over the summer before their first year at a given high school, all incoming students will receive a list of advisors and their hobbies. Students rank their top 3 advisor choices and return the list to the school. Placement is on a first-come, first-served basis. Students are placed preferably in groups of 10 to 12 based on their rankings of the teachers. This way the student gets someone they feel comfortable with and will likely make a lasting connection with. When first implemented, students already attending the school will also get a ranking list and choose their advisor the same way. To ensure the teachers can properly assess threats, schools must provide adequate time for advisory meetings. This could be set up just like a homeroom where the advisory meets every morning for, say, 10 to 15 minutes before classes, or they could have designated blocks on days of the week where the group meets for a minimum of 30 minutes to hang out, play games, and talk together. It is important to allow advisories to get together often so that the advisor can learn the normal behaviors of the students so the threat assessment works properly. It also provides students with a safe space to express opinions or frustrations. It is important to keep in mind that the curriculum, though based around threat assessment, is not supposed to be a constant reminder of the chance of a school shooting. As Adult 3 stated during their interview, quote, "There is a point at which you can perhaps fixate too much on any issue," end quote. With this in mind, the curriculum is made to connect students and give adults a chance to know a small group so they can accurately perform threat assessment. Students shouldn't feel unsafe or constantly worried while at school. With that being said, the advisory curriculum still wants to focus on preventing violence. It does this through connecting students together so no one slips through the cracks and adults can catch them before they resort to violence. I used my findings from the surveys and interviews to create the advisory curriculum. The observations of adults on cliques within the high school help show that they are more observant of these social structures and can see when they harm the dynamics of the student body. This will help with threat assessment because they can tell what students are being hurt by these dynamics and pay close attention to those individuals. This research was successful. However, there were many limitations to the study. If I were to conduct my research again, I would send the survey to more than one school. This way, I can gain more perspectives and possibly more interviewees. There was also a noticeable lack of diversity in the survey results. Majority of the adults were white and older than 40, and majority of the students were white and 9th graders. This limits whether or not views were different depending on age or race. I also had mostly female respondents. However, statistical analysis showed that gender didn't play a role in viewing cliques. I would have still liked to have seen a larger number of male respondents, though. Lastly, I only had 2 students complete interviews. I was hoping this number would have been a lot higher. If I were to do this again, I would send this survey out to a second time to hopefully get more interview volunteers. This study bridged the gap between school dynamics and gun violence prevention, noting that adults observe more harmful social structures than students, giving them the ability to watch how this can negatively affect students. This curriculum can be inserted into as many American high schools as possible to connect students together and hopefully prevent gun violence. Since it is such a pressing issue, this curriculum could help reduce the number of deaths and not have kids fearful of going to school. Thank you. My sources are available upon request, and I am now open for questions.
Make sure when you ask the question you have the microphone, because when we're filming, the questions go right in there. So.
Hi, Julia.
Hi.
Did you observe any correlation between the spike in the number of school shootings and the pandemic?
I did not research that because I wanted to focus more on prevention in the future and less of the shootings in the past. But on the slide from the K-12 school shooting database, there was a little dip in the numbers of school shootings just because kids weren't in school as often, so there was less chance for a violent incident to happen on school grounds.
What made you choose to research this topic?
So I think in 2022 or 2023, there was a major school shooting at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, and that event kind of grasped my interest in this topic. And last year, so my junior year, I did an argumentative paper on gun laws specifically and less of prevention. And so I knew when I was doing my capstone, I wanted to conduct real research on this topic just because it is so common and something that is kind of an ever-growing issue in this country. And I know that research on it could be very valuable to the future and to all of us in this room as well.
If you could do your research again, what would you do differently?
So I would probably send my survey out to multiple schools, and since the school already has a pre-existing advisory program, I would probably send my survey out to a school that doesn't have a pre-existing advisory program, so I could see if these ideas of connectedness differed based on having that advisory or not. And I would also maybe send the survey out for a second round just to get more student interviewees, since I only had 2, and I would have liked that number to be a little higher.
Is this curriculum something that you would want to be implemented in every high school?
So the main goal would be for this to be implemented into every American high school, but I know that that is not entirely feasible. So if this couldn't be implemented into every high school, I would like it to be implemented into rural, wealthy, low minority high schools, as those are the places with the most targeted school shootings with student active shooters.
Do you think you would have had different results if you had had more student interviews?
I think that if I had had more student interviews, I would have been able to gather better information on connectedness and to see, since I also only had upperclassmen, I would have liked underclassmen just to see how they felt coming into the school and to see if their opinions kind of were the same about the advisory curriculum. And so I think that if I had had more student interviews, I would have had more diverse opinions and ranges of students as well.
Hi, Julia. Thank you for a nice presentation. I'm curious, so you just mentioned connectedness. In your survey, you were getting at connectedness by asking about cliques, and I'd like to know your thinking behind that.
So I know that cliques can kind of be harmful because students group together and don't really branch out and meet new people. And so like one example would be like you have your popular clique, and then you have your kind of your hicks, and then you have kind of your nerds, and then so stuff like that can be really harmful for students just because they're not really branching out and getting other opinions, and that causes a lot of bullying as well, because if you think that one group of students isn't necessarily as cool or as smart as you, then that just causes a lot of negative interactions. And so I asked about cliques because I found through kind of over the years of high school as well, talking with people, a lot of people that I've spoken with have kind of observed some cliques within this school. And so I just wanted to ask about that to see what the adults and what the students thought, and I figured that that would be a good way to kind of gauge whether or not they have the same or different opinions as well. And from what I found, it showed that adults kind of observed those harmful social structures more than the students did, which was surprising to me.